The first time the little girl called me sir. I thought she was just lost. Then she lifted her chin, looked through the tinted glass of my SUV and said, steady as a judge, "Sir, that woman is alive. She is my mother." The words hit like a shot I couldn't hear, because the woman she pointed at was a ghost I'd buried 7 years ago. She was small, maybe 5, in a puffy coat, hair a mess of dark curls, cheeks smudged with city dirt. She stood outside a midtown diner under the neon sign while my driver waited for my nod. Her finger trembled, not from fear of me, but from cold and conviction. Across the street, a woman stepped out of a pharmacy with a paper bag. She moved like someone trying not to be noticed. For a second, her face turned toward the traffic light and my breath stopped. Same scar near the eyebrow, same jawline. Lena. But before we continue, I want to make a very special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps me see that you support me and are enjoying my stories. And comment below which city you're watching us from. Now let's continue. My men had told me Lena Carter was dead. They'd shown me photos, paperwork, a closed casket. I'd paid for the funeral because guilt is easier when it has a receipt. Now a kid who couldn't reach my door handle was handing me a truth I didn't deserve. I stepped into the rain. My security started to follow, but I cut them off with a look. Nobody touched her. "What's your name?" I asked, crouching to her height. "Maisie," she said. Then, like it mattered more, "Maisie Carter." Carter, Lena's name. The name she kept, even after I offered her mine, even after I promised her a clean life if she'd stop asking questions about my work. "Where's your mum?" I asked. Maisie nodded hard. "That's her. She told me to stay inside, but I saw you. You're the man from her picture." My stomach turned. Lena didn't keep pictures unless she had to. "You shouldn't talk to strangers," I said, hating how fake it sounded. "You're not a stranger," she said. "You're the reason she cries in the bathroom." Across the street, the woman glanced up again. This time her eyes met mine. Recognition, then panic. She turned and walked fast toward the subway entrance. "Stay here," I told Maisie, and I nodded to my driver. He guided her into the diner with his umbrella, gentle as if she were breakable. I crossed through traffic, ignoring horns. "Lena!" My voice cracked on her name. When I reached her, I caught her wrist carefully. She spun, eyes wide, and for a heartbeat I saw the Lena I used to know. Then her face locked into something practiced. "You're mistaken," she said. "I'm not who you think I am." "You're alive," I breathed. "They told me you were dead." "They?" Her gaze flicked over my shoulder, measuring the street, the reflections, the cameras. "Let go of me, Dominic." Hearing my name from her mouth again hurt. "Why?" I demanded. "Why disappear? Why let me believe?" "Because believing kept you from burning the city down looking for me," she snapped, then softened, like she regretted the truth. "Then tell me what you're running from," I said. Her throat bobbed. "Not running," she whispered. "Hiding." Behind her, a man in a baseball cap paused at the subway stairs, watching us too closely. My instincts tightened. I shifted, putting myself between Lena and the stairs. She noticed, and her face tightened with fear. She tried to swallow. "Don't bring your war to my child," she whispered. My chest went cold. "Maisie is yours," I said. Then the question slipped out anyway. "Is she mine?" Lena's eyes flicked toward the diner window, where a small face pressed to the glass. "She's alive," Lena said, voice shaking now. "That's what matters." The man in the cap started down the steps again, slow, like he'd decided. I released Lena's wrist, but I didn't step away. "Come with me," I said. "Both of you, right now." "To your world?" she asked, bitter. "To your guards?" "To safety," I said, "because someone lied to me with perfect paperwork and a sealed coffin." She hesitated, and in that pause I understood. She hadn't vanished to escape me. She'd vanished to survive someone who could still reach her. I leaned in, voice low. "Tell me who did this, who told me you were dead." Her eyes shone with tears she refused to drop. "If I say his name," she whispered, "you'll kill him." I held her gaze and forced my voice steady. "I'll end it," I said, "but I won't let Maisie grow up hunted." Lena's lips parted, and the name she finally gave me was the last one I expected. "Your consigliere," she said. "Franklin Shaw." The rain kept falling, but the city suddenly felt too quiet, like it was listening. I didn't ask more questions on the sidewalk. Questions could wait. Survival couldn't. I walked Lena back toward the diner, slow, like we were strangers, like cameras weren't everywhere. Maisie rushed out the moment she saw her, arms open, and Lena dropped to her knees, hugging her so tight the child squeaked. I saw Lena's hands shaking against the little coat. I saw the bruised yellow edge of fear around her eyes. My driver opened the SUV door. "Get in," I told them, and for the first time in my life the order sounded like a plea. Lena climbed in last, still watching the subway stairs. The man in the cap had vanished, but I knew what that meant. He wasn't gone, he was reporting. As the door shut, I caught my reflection in the glass, the king of a city built on silence, suddenly terrified of what the truth would cost. Dominic kept his face calm as the SUV slid into traffic, but under his ribs everything shook. He sat across from Lena and the child, watching Maisie's small hands clutch Lena's sleeve like a lifeline. Lena held her close and kept her free hand near the door, as if she expected to have to run again. He didn't take them to his penthouse. He didn't take them anywhere Frank Shaw knew by habit. Dominic took them to a quiet Brooklyn brownstone owned on paper by a dead company, and in reality, by an old woman who never asked questions. Mrs. Pappas opened the door, nodded once, and disappeared downstairs. Upstairs, Dominic checked the street. Rain blurred the city, but he still noticed what mattered: a car that slowed too long, a man who stood without a purpose. Lena spoke before Dominic could. "Don't call your crew," she said. "Not yet. He's my consigliere," Dominic replied. The title sounded ugly in his mouth. "He knows every move I make." "That's why you can't move like yourself," Lena said, and her voice carried a tired certainty that scared him. Maisie curled into the couch, knees up, eyes scanning the room like she was counting exits. Dominic sat across from her, keeping his hands open, letting her decide he wasn't a threat. "You said I'm the man from her picture," Dominic told Maisie. "What picture?" Lena pulled a worn wallet from her pocket. Inside was an old photo, creased and soft. Dominic and Lena at Coney Island, laughing like they had time. Behind it was a smaller cutout from a newspaper, a ribbon-cutting shot of Franklin Shaw smiling in a suit. Dominic's mouth went dry. "Why do you have him?" "Because he found us," Lena said. "Twice." Dominic's anger came sharp, then hollowed into shame. "I mourned you," he said quietly. "I buried you." "I know," Lena whispered. "That's why I couldn't let you doubt it. Frank needed you convinced." Dominic stood and paced once, then forced himself still. "Start from the beginning," he said, keeping his voice gentle for Maisie. "Tell me what he did." Lena took a breath like it hurt. "I learned Frank was skimming," she said. "Selling information, using your name like armor. When I confronted him, he told me you'd never believe me, and if you did, you'd kill him, and the people he worked for would kill me." Dominic's jaw tightened. He remembered that year. Shortages, bad intel, rivals always one step ahead. He'd blamed the city. He'd never blamed the man who sat beside him at every meeting. "Frank arranged the crash," Lena continued. "The body, the paperwork. He made you pay for my funeral because it sealed the story. Then he told me I owed him." "Owed him what?" Dominic asked. Lena's eyes dropped to Maisie. "A child," she said. Maisie lifted her chin, trying to be brave. "He wanted me," she said, like she was reporting the weather. Dominic's stomach clenched. "Why?" Lena's voice went low. "Maisie isn't my blood," she admitted. "But she's mine. Frank sent me to pick up a package. A little girl in a motel room in Jersey, scared and silent. I couldn't do it, so I took her and ran." Dominic swallowed. He didn't ask for details he didn't need. He looked at Maisie and saw how her shoulders stayed tight, how caution had replaced games. "I stole cash," Lena said, "and I stole a drive from Frank's safe. I thought it was insurance, it was proof." Dominic's pulse thudded. "Where is it?" Lena tapped her coat pocket. "On me," she said. "Always. Proof could save them or kill them, depending on who grabbed it first." Dominic forced his breathing slow. "How did Frank find you?" he asked. "By being patient," Lena replied. "By putting feelers in shelters, clinics, schools. He found me once in Buffalo. I escaped because I moved the next day. He found me again in Newark. I escaped because someone left a note under my door that said, 'Run.'" Dominic stared at her. "Who?" Lena's eyes flicked away. "Doesn't matter," she said. "What matters is he's close again." Maisie nodded, as if this was a lesson. "Mum says if we get lost, we go to a library," she offered. "Libraries have rules." Dominic felt a tight ache in his chest. He'd grown up learning which alleys had no cameras. Maisie had grown up learning where rules might keep her alive. Dominic went to the kitchen and pulled out an old landline Mrs. Pappas kept for emergencies. He didn't call his crew. He called Detective Erin Morrow, the cop who hated him enough to tell the truth. Morrow answered flatly. "You're brave," she said. "I need you to run Franklin Shaw," Dominic replied. Quietly. A pause. "Why?" "Because he lied to me about a death," Dominic said, "and because he's hunting a woman and a child." Silence, then a breath. "Stay where you are," Morrow said. "Don't move." Dominic hung up and turned back to Lena. He didn't know whether to apologize or demand answers. He chose the only thing that mattered. "You saved her," he said, nodding at Maisie. "Whatever else happened, you saved her." Lena's shoulders trembled, relief and grief mixing. "I tried," she whispered, "but I can't keep running." Dominic looked out the window again. A black sedan rolled past the corner, too deliberate. It didn't stop. It just moved, like it was counting. Dominic turned back, voice low and certain. "Then we stop running," he said. "We make Frank Shaw the one who can't hide." Maisie looked up at him, eyes wide. "You can make him go away?" Dominic held her gaze and felt the weight of every choice he'd made. "I can try," he said, "and this time I won't let you pay the price." Outside, the rain kept falling. Dominic knew it wouldn't wash away what was coming. He just still hoped it would buy them one night. Dominic didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, writing names in neat columns as if order could fix betrayal. Lena dozed on the couch with Maisie curled against her, both of them finally still. Dominic kept the lamp low and his ears open, listening for footsteps on the stairs, for the wrong car outside, for the sound that meant he'd been outplayed again. Near dawn, Detective Morrow called back. Her voice sounded tighter than before. "You asked me to run Franklin Shaw," she said. Dominic gripped the receiver. "What do you have?" "Officially nothing," Morrow answered. "No priors, no open cases. A clean citizen who donates to children's hospitals and goes to church on Christmas." Dominic's laugh was humorless. "That's his favorite costume." "Unofficially," Morrow continued, "his name shows up in sealed documents connected to federal task forces. He's been interviewed but never charged. He's either very lucky or he's talking." Dominic felt cold spread through his chest. "Talking to who?" "Feds," Morrow said, "or worse, to whoever he's supposed to be helping the feds catch. People play both sides. You know that." Dominic stared at Lena on the couch. She opened her eyes like she'd been awake the whole time. "He's an informant," Dominic said. "Or a handler," Morrow replied. "Either way, he has friends with badges." Dominic's jaw tightened. "Can you arrest him?" "Not with what I have," Morrow said. "And not if he's protected." "Dominic, whatever you're doing, don't drag a kid into it." Dominic swallowed. "Too late," he said, and hung up. He walked to the living room and crouched beside the couch. Lena's eyes were red, but her voice stayed steady. "He's protected," Dominic said. "That's why he never gets dirty." Lena nodded once. "Frank doesn't like blood on his hands," she said. "He likes signatures, forms, people who look away." Dominic looked at Maisie, asleep with her mouth slightly open. She made a soft sound like she was dreaming of something safe. "When did you decide to keep her?" he asked Lena. Lena didn't answer right away. "The moment I saw her shoes," she said finally. "They were on the wrong feet. She was so little she couldn't fix it, and nobody cared enough to help. Frank told me to deliver her like it was paperwork. I realized if I did what he wanted, I'd never be able to look at myself again." Dominic stood and went back to the table. "We need to know what Frank wants," he said. "Not just you, not just Maisie, the drive." Lena sat up slowly, careful not to wake the child. "The drive is a ledger," she said. "Payments, names, dates. I don't understand all of it, but I understand enough. Frank's been selling you out for years." Dominic's anger flared, then settled into something colder. "He's not just stealing," Dominic said. "He's steering." Lena watched Dominic like she was measuring how much monster was left in him. "What will you do?" she asked. Dominic's voice came out low. "I'm going to see Frank," he said. Lena's eyes sharpened. "No," she said instantly. "He'll smell this. He'll set you up." "He already has," Dominic replied. "If he's protected by badges, he'll use them to corner me. So I have to make him choose. He thinks I'm predictable. I need to be something else." Lena studied him, then nodded once, reluctantly. "We do it together." she said. Or we don't do it. He grabbed his phone and opened an old contact list he'd promised himself he'd never use again. He called Victor Haynes, the accountant who kept Dominic's books clean and his secrets cleaner. Victor answered in a sleepy rasp. Boss? I need everything you have on Frank, Dominic said. Every expense he signed, every meeting he scheduled, every time he moved money without my approval. A pause. That's a lot, Victor said carefully. Find it, Dominic replied. And Victor, if Frank asks, you don't know where I am. Victor exhaled. Understood. Dominic hung up and looked at Lena. We can't stay here, he said. Not after sunrise. Lena nodded. I know a place, she said. A church basement in Staten Island. The woman who runs it doesn't ask names. Dominic frowned. Frank will check churches. He won't check this one, Lena said. Because it's where he hides things. Dominic's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? Lena reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small brass key on a cheap ring. Because he made me keep it, she said. He said it was my reminder, my leash. Dominic took the key and felt fury burn behind his teeth. Maisie stirred, eyes blinking open. Are we moving again? She asked, voice small. Lena brushed her hair back. Yes, baby, she said softly. But we're moving with help now. Maisie looked at Dominic. You're really going to stop him? She asked. Dominic hesitated, then chose honesty in the simplest form a child could hold. I'm going to try very hard, he said. Maisie nodded like that was enough. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled drawing. Stick figures. A tall man with dark hair, a woman with long hair and a tiny girl between them. Above them, in shaky letters, one word. Home. Dominic's chest tightened. He set the drawing on the table like it was evidence of the only life worth fighting for. Okay, Dominic said. We move now, and this time Frank doesn't get to decide who lives. Dominic handed Lena a burner phone, slid another into his pocket, and told Mrs. Pappas to lock the front door behind them. He turned off the lamp. The room dimmed, and Dominic held on to one thought. Nobody was taking that home from her. The church basement in Staten Island smelled like coffee and damp concrete. A volunteer let them in without asking names, only pointed to folding chairs and a space heater. Dominic sat with his back to a pillar, watching the stairwell. Victor Haynes texted just after noon. Frank moved $2 million yesterday. Not your accounts. A second set. Meet tonight. Dominic stared at the message until the letters blurred. Shaw had been building a second empire inside Dominic's, using Dominic's reputation as a shield. Dominic wrote one address on a slip of paper and slid it to Lena. There's a charity gala in Manhattan, he said. Frank will be there. He'll be smiling for cameras. I'm going to make him talk. Lena's face tightened. That's his stage, she warned. He controls the exits. That's why we choose the exits first, Dominic said. He didn't bring his usual crew. He brought 2 men who owed him their lives and 1 woman who owed him nothing. Detective Morrow, wearing a black dress and an expression that promised she wouldn't protect him. They walked into the ballroom of the Pierre Hotel. Crystal lights glittered overhead. People laughed like money had never hurt anyone. Lena stayed away from the ballroom. She was upstairs in a small suite Mrs. Pappas had arranged through a friend who cleaned rooms. Maisie sat on the carpet with crayons and a notebook, drawing the same 3 stick figures again and again. Dominic hated leaving them out of sight. Across the room, Franklin Shaw stood with a drink in hand, smiling at a councilman. His suit was perfect, his smile practiced. Dominic approached with a calm that felt like a lie. Shaw saw him and spread his arms as if greeting a son. Dominic, Shaw said warmly, you're late. I was starting to worry. You worry a lot, Dominic replied, voice flat. Shaw's eyes flicked over Dominic's shoulder, checking for the usual shadows. Where's your security? Learning new habits, Dominic said. Like I am. Shaw chuckled, soft and controlled. This city rewards men who adapt, he said. Come, I want you to meet someone. They moved toward a quieter corner where a tall man in a grey suit waited, hands clasped behind his back. He looked like a lawyer, but his eyes were trained, alert, badge eyes. Special Agent Keller, Shaw introduced smoothly. This is Dominic Vale, a pillar of the community according to my tax filings. Keller shook Dominic's hand. Mr. Vale, he said, we should talk sometime. Shaw leaned closer, voice low, fatherly. You see, he murmured. Friends in high places, that's how you survive the long game. Dominic's pulse hammered. Morrow drifted near, pretending to admire a painting while listening. Dominic needed a crack in Shaw's armor, something he could pry open. "I saw a ghost today," Dominic said quietly. Shaw's face stayed smooth. "You work too much," he replied. "Stress does that." "A ghost with your fingerprints," Dominic pressed. "A woman you told me was dead." For the first time, Shaw's smile faltered. Not fear. Calculation. He took a slow sip of his drink. "You're talking nonsense," he said. Dominic leaned closer. "Say her name," Dominic whispered. "Say Lena Carter is dead. Say it while you look me in the eye." Shaw's gaze stayed on Dominic, steady as stone. "Lena Carter is dead," Shaw said, and Dominic realized with a sick twist that Shaw believed he could will reality into place by declaring it. Dominic was about to push harder when his phone vibrated. A message from Lena, only 3 words. "He's at the door." Dominic's blood turned to ice. He stepped back from Shaw without breaking eye contact. "Excuse me," Dominic said, and walked away before Shaw could stop him. He moved fast through the hallway, past guests and guards up the service stairs. Morrow followed, heels clicking, her hand already on her purse where her badge and gun hid. At the suite door, Dominic saw it. The lock scratched, the frame splintered. Someone had used a thin tool, quiet and practiced. Dominic pushed inside. Maisie stood in the middle of the room, frozen, crayon still in hand. Lena was between her and a man in a baseball cap, the same cap from the subway. The man held a phone up, recording, smiling like he'd caught something valuable. "Wave hello," the man said to Maisie, sweet as poison. Lena's voice was tight. "Don't," she warned. Dominic didn't shout. He didn't rush. He moved like a shadow crossing light, fast and precise. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted just enough to make him drop the phone and shoved him against the wall. Morrow flashed her badge. "Police," she snapped. "Hands where I can see them." The man's smile didn't break. "You're too late," he said, eyes on Dominic. Frank already got what he needed. Dominic's stomach sank. "What did you take?" Dominic demanded. The man nodded toward Maisie's notebook on the carpet. Dominic's gaze dropped. The drawing. Not just stick figures. Numbers. Addresses. A child's handwriting, copied from lessons Lena thought were harmless. Maisie whispered, terrified, "I didn't mean to." Dominic's throat tightened. He understood immediately. Frank hadn't needed the drive tonight. He needed a map to find them again and again. Morrow cuffed the man, jaw clenched. "He's with Shaw," she said. "I can hold him for breaking and entering, but if Shaw's protected, then we stop playing defense," Dominic said. He knelt beside Maisie and took her small hands gently. "You did nothing wrong," he told her. "You were trying to remember. That's smart." Maisie's eyes filled. "Is Mom going to die?" she whispered. Dominic looked at Lena. Her face was pale, but her eyes were fierce. Dominic felt something settle inside him, something like a vow. "No," Dominic said, voice steady. "Not this time." Dominic stared at the cracked doorframe and understood the next move. He wasn't going to ask Shaw for the truth anymore. He was going to take it today. Dominic chose the next battlefield where Frank Shaw couldn't hide behind chandeliers and applause. He chose numbers because Frank loved numbers more than people. Before sunrise, Dominic drove to an empty office building in Long Island City that Victor Haynes used for paperwork. Victor waited inside with a laptop and shaking hands. "Frank's been running parallel books for 3 years, Victor said. "Offshore shells, domestic shells, charity funnels. He's moving money through hospitals and housing projects. He's making himself look like a saint." "A saint with a leash," Dominic muttered, thinking of the key Lena carried like shame. Lena sat beside Dominic at the table, Maisie asleep in a back room with Mrs. Pappas. "We can't just kill him," Dominic said, the words bitter even as he kept his voice low. "He's protected. If I touch him, badges come down on me, and they'll use you as leverage." Lena's lips pressed tight. "Then don't touch him," she said. "Expose him." Victor swallowed. "Expose him to who? The feds might be in his pocket." Dominic leaned back, thinking. "Not all of them," he said, "and not all at the same time. Frank's power is control of information. We break that control, he loses his shield." Lena reached into her pocket and placed the small drive on the table. It looked harmless, like something a student would use. "This is the last card I have," she said. "If we play it, there's no running after." Dominic stared at it, then at her. "Why keep it on you?" he asked softly. Lena's voice cracked. "Because if I died, I wanted someone to find it," she said. "I wanted the truth to survive even if I didn't." Dominic felt a tight, hot ache behind his eyes. He looked away, ashamed of how much he'd trusted Frank and how little he'd protected Lena. "Before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in his place. Don't leave the video because what comes next will give you chills." Dominic slid the drive back toward Lena. "Not yet," he said. "First, we make Frank confess where he thinks he's safe." Victor frowned. "How?" Dominic opened the laptop and pulled up the gala footage Morrow had copied from hotel security. The man in the baseball cap, the recording phone, the moment he nodded toward Maisie's notebook. Dominic paused the frame on the man's face. "Who is he?" Dominic asked. Victor's fingers moved quickly. "That's Ray Danton," Victor said. "He does errands, surveillance. He used to work for the Huddleston crew." Dominic's jaw tightened. The Huddlestons were an old rival outfit from the Bronx, quieter than Dominic's organization, but just as hungry. "Frank is still feeding them," Dominic said. Lena's voice went low. "That means he's going to trade us," she said, "to buy himself more protection." Dominic nodded. "Exactly," he said. "So we set a trade he can't resist, and we record every word." Morrow arrived an hour later, coat damp, eyes hard. "I can't promise you immunity," she told Dominic. "If you're asking me to help you trap your consigliere, you better understand what it costs." Dominic didn't flinch. "I understand," he said, and he meant it more than he ever had. Morrow looked at Lena. "You're sure about this?" she asked. Lena glanced toward the back room where Maisie slept. "I'm done being afraid," she said, "but I'm not done being careful." They built the plan fast. Dominic would message Frank that he'd found Lena and that a drive existed. He'd insist on meeting with no crew, no witnesses. Victor would wire the room. Morrow would bring one federal agent she trusted, someone outside Shaw's circle. Lena would stay hidden, close enough to hear every lie. Dominic typed the message himself. "Found her. She has something. I need you tonight. No crew." He stared at the screen for a long moment before pressing send. Lena watched him. "You're scared," she said, not as an accusation, but as a fact. Dominic nodded once. "Frank raised me," he admitted. "He taught me how to win. He taught me how to survive. I don't know who I am without his voice in my head." Lena's expression softened, then steadied. "Then let's find out," she said. A small sound came from the back room. Maisie shuffled out, dragging a blanket, eyes half closed. She walked straight to Lena and leaned into her like gravity. Dominic watched Lena kiss the top of her head, and something in him unclenched. Maisie looked at Dominic sleepily. "Are we going home?" she asked. Dominic swallowed. "We're going to a safer place," he said. Maisie blinked. "Is Frank the bad man?" she asked. Lena froze. Dominic felt his pulse spike. He crouched to Maisie's height, keeping his voice careful. "Frank has made bad choices," Dominic said, "and we're going to stop him from hurting you." Maisie studied him like she was older than 5. "You stop bad choices by telling the truth," she said, repeating a line she'd learned. Dominic felt a chill. Kids absorb survival. That night, Dominic dressed plainly and kept only what mattered: a plan, a promise, and 2 lives that weren't going to be traded again. In the quiet after the message, Dominic listened to the building's hum and remembered Lena's laugh from years ago. He realized he wasn't baiting Frank with money. He was baiting him with certainty, the thing Frank never shared with anyone but himself. When Frank Shaw answered the message, it came as a single sentence that made Dominic's skin crawl. "Good. I'll handle it." Dominic showed Lena the screen. Lena's face went pale, then hard. "He's coming to finish it," she said. Dominic nodded, and for the first time he didn't feel like a king preparing for war. He felt like a man preparing to tell the truth, even if it burned everything he'd built. Frank arrived alone, exactly on time, which told Dominic everything. Frank didn't come alone because he trusted Dominic. He came alone because he trusted the net he'd already placed around Dominic. The meeting room looked ordinary. A table, chairs, fluorescent lights. Morrow waited next door with Special Agent Lila Grant. Lena listened from a closet with a cracked door. Dominic stood when Frank entered. Frank's smile was calm, paternal, as if they were meeting to discuss investments. "You look tired," Frank said, and Dominic heard the old affection baked into the words like poison in sugar. You look confident, Dominic replied. Frank's eyes swept the room, quick and sharp, then settled back into softness. You said you found her, Frank said. Dominic didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and placed a second drive on the table. A decoy Victor had made, identical in size and color. I found this, Dominic said. And I found Lena. For a fraction of a second, Frank's pupils tightened. Then he chuckled lightly. I told you grief plays tricks, he said. Dominic leaned forward. Say it again, he pressed. Say Lena Carter is dead. Frank's smile held, but his voice cooled. Dominic, he warned, you're emotional. Dominic forced his hands still. Where is she, Frank? He asked. And where is the child you tried to take? Frank's gaze flicked to the door, not in fear, but in calculation. You've been busy, he said. Dominic watched him carefully. You sent Ray Danton, Dominic said. You used him to map us. Frank sighed as if disappointed. Ray is an idiot, he said. But he did his job. You always had trouble seeing the big picture. Dominic felt his stomach drop. Frank wasn't denying it. He was dismissing it. What big picture? Dominic asked. Frank sat uninvited and folded his hands. You were a useful storm, he said. People feared you. They moved when you moved. But storms burn out. They attract attention. I needed something steadier. Dominic's jaw clenched. So you built a second empire behind my back, Dominic said. Frank's eyes softened, almost sad. I built a future, he corrected. One where you don't end up in a cell. One where our money doesn't die with us. Our? Dominic repeated, tasting the lie. Frank leaned in. Do you know what Lena did? He asked. She stole from us. She stole from me. And she stole something she doesn't understand. Dominic's voice went low. She saved a child. Frank's smile thinned. She stole a child, he said. And you, Dominic, you're sentimental enough to call it heroism. From the closet, Dominic heard Lena's breath catch. Dominic kept his face blank. Maisie is not yours, Dominic said. She's Lena's. Frank shrugged. Names are paper, he said. Blood is leverage. Dominic's pulse spiked. Whose blood? He asked. Frank's eyes gleamed. That's the part you never learned, he said. The kid is the last living grandchild of Arthur Huddleston. Dominic's skin went cold. Arthur Huddleston had been the rival patriarch who'd started the old Bronx War, the one Dominic thought was finished. Huddleston is dead, Dominic said. Arthur is, Frank agreed, but his money isn't. His people aren't. And they've been looking for that little girl because she's a key to accounts, inheritances, promises made in back rooms. Dominic's mind raced. So that was it. Maisie wasn't a random victim. She was a bargaining chip that could buy Frank protection, power, and a new kingdom. You were going to trade her, Dominic said, voice tight. Frank didn't deny it. I was going to end a conflict, he said. You would have benefited too. Dominic's hands curled under the table. You staged Lena's death, Dominic said. You used me. Frank's expression finally hardened. I gave you everything, he snapped, the mask slipping. I made you. Dominic felt the old loyalty flare like a reflex, then burn away. He realized, with sick clarity, that Frank's love had always been ownership. Dominic slid the decoy drive closer to Frank. Here, he said. Take it. End your conflict. Frank's gaze dropped to it. Greed flickered. Good, he murmured. Dominic watched Frank's hand reach out, and in that moment Dominic didn't lunge, he didn't threaten. He did something Frank never expected. He stood up and walked toward the door. Frank froze. Where are you going? He asked sharply. Dominic opened the door and looked straight at Morrow and Agent Grant waiting with their recording device already running. I'm going to tell the truth, Dominic said. Frank's face tightened, and for the first time, he looked scared. Morrow stepped forward, badge visible. Franklin Shaw, she said, voice firm. You're being recorded. Frank's eyes darted, calculating exits that weren't there. His hand jerked toward his jacket pocket. Dominic moved fast, intercepting, pinning Frank's wrist to the table without striking, just controlling. Don't, Dominic warned, low. Frank's breath came hard. You don't understand what you're doing, he hissed. They'll bury you. Agent Grant stepped in, calm and cold. We're not here for Dominic, she said. We're here for you. Frank's smile tried to come back, shaky. I'm protected, he said. Ask your superiors. Grant held up a folder. Not anymore, she replied. Records, witnesses, and now your own words. Dominic heard a soft sound behind him. Lena. The closet door cracked wider. Dominic met her eyes for a heartbeat. She looked both furious and relieved, like she'd been holding her breath for 7 years. Frank stared at Dominic, hatred replacing affection. "You'd choose them over me?" he spat. Dominic's voice stayed steady. "I'm choosing the kid," he said, "and I'm choosing the truth." Outside the office, a siren rose in the distance, a sound that meant the world was noticing the man who'd hidden behind it. But Dominic knew this wasn't over. Frank wasn't the only one who wanted Maisie. The Huddlestons would come for their key, and now everyone would know where Dominic Vale stood. Frank Shaw was taken away in cuffs, but the room didn't feel lighter. Dominic watched the door close behind him and understood the shape of the next danger. When a man like Frank falls, he doesn't fall alone. He pulls strings, and other hands tighten. Agent Grant didn't celebrate. She looked at Dominic like he was a problem she could finally solve. "You have leverage now," she said. "Use it to keep the child alive." Dominic's throat tightened at the bluntness. "Huddleston will come," Dominic said. "Frank admitted it on tape." Grant nodded. "And you," she replied, "are their obvious route to her." Lena stepped into the room, leaving the closet at last. She didn't rush to Dominic. She went straight to the decoy drive on the table and snapped it in half with shaking hands. The gesture was small, but it told Dominic everything about how tired she was of bargaining with her life. "We move," Dominic said. "Now." Dominic chose a place Frank didn't control, a public hospital in Queens. Mrs. Pappas took Maisie to the pediatric waiting area. Lena and Dominic waited nearby. Morrow arrived in plain clothes, eyes red with lack of sleep. "They're moving," she said. "Not just Huddleston. People Frank owed favors to, people Frank sold secrets to. You lit a match in a gasoline room." Dominic stared at the coffee cup in his hands. "Then tell me how to get out," he said. Morrow's expression didn't soften. "Why you don't," she replied. "Not clean, not fast, unless you give them something bigger than a kid." Dominic looked up. "What?" he asked, though he already felt the answer like a bruise. Morrow nodded toward Agent Grant across the waiting area, reading reports on a tablet. "You," she said. "Your testimony, your books, your roots, your crew, all of it." Dominic's chest tightened. He had built an empire out of fear and loyalty. He had told himself it was protection. Now that empire was the exact thing hunting a child. Lena approached quietly, as if she'd been listening. "Dominic," she said, voice low, "the drive isn't just Frank." Dominic met her eyes. "I know," he admitted. Lena flinched. "Then why keep it off the table?" she asked. "Because it burns me," Dominic said, and the words tasted like metal. "And because I didn't want you to see what I've done." Lena's gaze didn't move. "I already know who you were," she said. "I came back because I needed to see who you are now." Maisie appeared at Lena's side, small hand gripping the edge of her coat. "Mom," she whispered, "there's a man staring." Dominic's head turned. Across the corridor, a tall man in a windbreaker stood too still, eyes fixed on Maisie. He didn't look like a thug. He looked patient. That made him worse. Dominic stood, body blocking Maisie from view. Morrow's hand moved toward her waist, but Dominic shook his head. "Not here." Agent Grant rose, already moving. "Everybody up," she said. "Now." They moved through a staff stairwell and out into the ambulance bay. A black SUV rolled in, too certain. Dominic pulled Lena toward the ER entrance, while Morrow rushed Mrs. Pappas and Maisie ahead, badge flashing. The tall man called out calm. "Dominic Vale," he said. "We only want the girl." Maisie's small body stiffened against Lena. Lena's face went white with fury. Dominic turned just enough to see the man's eyes. He wasn't angry. He was transactional. Dominic raised his voice so cameras would hear. "You want a kid in a hospital?" Dominic shouted. "Say it again. Loud." The man paused. His gaze flicked to the security cameras, to the nurses now staring. He didn't answer. He retreated a step, already adjusting. Grant stepped forward. "Units are coming," she said. The man smiled thinly and backed away. Inside a locked office, Grant faced Dominic like a judge. "That was a warning," she said. "Next time, they won't do it in public." Dominic's breathing came hard. He looked at Maisie, still clutching Lena's coat, eyes huge. He looked at Lena, who refused to cry because crying felt like giving up. Dominic made the decision that would change everything. "You want my testimony?" Dominic asked Grant. You'll get it. He sent one final message to his captains. Stand down, stay home, no retaliation. If anyone touched the girl, Dominic promised he'd testify twice as hard. Morrow's eyes widened. Dominic? No. Dominic cut her off, voice steady. I'm done pretending my world is separate from hers. I built the machine. I'm going to help you shut it down. Grant studied him. And in exchange? She asked. Protection, Dominic said. For Lena. For Maisie. New names. New city. A real start. Lena's lips parted. Shock and something like hope colliding. You'd give up everything? She whispered. Dominic looked at her, and he spoke in the third person like a man describing someone he barely recognized. Dominic Vale has taken enough, he said. He's going to pay something back. Grant nodded once. Then we do it tonight, she said. We use Frank's confession to pull Huddleston in, and we use you to finish the net. Dominic glanced at Lena. Do you trust me? He asked. Lena held his gaze, the question she'd been carrying for 7 years. Then she nodded. I trust the man in front of me, she said. Dominic exhaled, slow. He looked down at Maisie. Are you brave? He asked gently. Maisie swallowed, then nodded, tiny and stubborn. I'm 5, she said. Like that explained everything. Dominic almost smiled. Okay, he said. Then we're going to do one brave thing together. Outside, sirens grew closer. Inside, Dominic felt the empire he'd built start to crack. For the first time, he didn't try to hold it together. Dominic didn't feel brave that night. He felt stripped, like a man watching his own life turned into evidence. Agent Grant moved with quiet precision, stacking warrants and names like bricks. Detective Morrow stayed close, reminding Dominic that promises meant nothing without paperwork. Grant refused to meet the Huddlestons in a place built for violence. She chose a bright federal conference room downtown, cameras in every hall, codes on every door. If they wanted their key, they would have to walk into the light. Using Frank's recorded confession, Grant pressured Ray Danton. Ray, terrified and eager to save himself, sent a message up the chain. The girl is located. The drive exists. Bring the money and the papers. Come collect. Dominic sat at the table with a microphone hidden under his collar. He'd spent years negotiating other people's fear. Now he negotiated for one small life, and the weight of it made him sick. The door opened and a woman stepped in first. Mid-40s, expensive coat, perfect hair. She didn't look like a gangster. She looked like a donor. Mr. Vale, she said smoothly. Cynthia Huddleston. Dominic kept his face empty. You're here for a child, he replied. I'm here for my family's property, Cynthia said like the word didn't cut. Grant's voice was calm. State your purpose for the record. Cynthia smiled. Bloodline access, she said. Accounts and trusts tied to the last living grandchild. Frank Shaw promised delivery. We brought the payment, we brought the paperwork. 2 men entered behind her with a duffel bag and a folder. Cynthia slid the folder across the table without hesitation, confident in her own entitlement. Grant opened it, scanned the pages, and nodded as if she was considering. You're admitting intent to take a minor, Grant said. Cynthia's smile thinned. If needed, she replied. Frank said Dominic would cooperate. Dominic leaned forward, voice steady, giving the recording what it needed. Frank staged Lena Carter's death, he said. He told you he could trade the girl for protection. Cynthia's eyes sharpened, and her composure slipped for the first time. Frank is weak now, she said, so we're here to solve it ourselves. Grant pressed a button under the table. Agents moved in fast, controlled, no chaos, just cuffs and closed doors. Cynthia's face turned from certainty to disbelief in a single breath. This is a mistake, she snapped. It's evidence, Grant replied. Thank you for bringing it. When the room emptied, Dominic sat still, hands flat on the table, breathing through the shock. He'd spent years believing power meant never being cornered. Now he understood a different kind of power, letting the truth corner the right people. Hours later, Dominic sat with Lena and Maisie in a small safe room. Maisie had a juice box and a stuffed bear a nurse had given her. She looked exhausted, but she wasn't watching the door every second. That alone felt like a miracle. Grant entered with a folder. Cynthia Huddleston is in custody, she said. Her paperwork, her statements, the confession tape, and Ray's cooperation make it airtight. Frank Shaw will be charged on multiple counts. Your records, Victor's records, and your testimony dismantle the rest. Dominic swallowed. What happens to me? He asked. Witness protection, Grant said. New identity. You testify, then you disappear. If you cooperate fully, you won't spend your life in a cell. If you don't, I can't offer anything. Dominic nodded. The deal wasn't mercy. It was a trade, his old life for a child's future. Dominic signed the first statement right there, then used Grant's phone to call his captains. He told them to surrender their ledgers, walk away and let the arrests happen without retaliation for once, quietly. Grant looked at Lena. You and the girl can be moved too, she said, if you want it. Lena's voice was quiet. I want a life where she can go to school without memorizing escape routes, she said. Maisie looked up at Dominic. Are you coming? She asked, simple as breathing. Dominic's chest tightened. He didn't deserve fatherhood. He didn't even know how to hold it without breaking it. Lena spoke carefully, telling the truth she'd carried like a stone. Maisie, she said, Dominic isn't your dad by blood. Maisie blinked, then shrugged in a way only a child could. He's still Dominic, she said. He stopped Frank. Dominic's eyes stung. He crouched to her height. If you want me in your life, he said, I'll be there in the way that keeps you safe. I won't make promises I can't keep. Maisie held out her hand. Dominic took it gently, and the gesture felt heavier than any weapon he'd ever carried. Not ownership, responsibility. Months later, they lived under new names in a small town far from New York. Dominic worked in a repair shop, learning the honest rhythm of days that didn't involve fear. Lena worked at a library, the kind with rules and quiet. Maisie started kindergarten and came home talking about crayons and friends instead of hiding places. Frank Shaw took a plea deal that stripped him of his mask in open court. The public finally saw the charity photos for what they were: camouflage. Cynthia Huddleston was convicted, her property language read back to her by a judge who didn't flinch. Dominic listened to the verdicts on a small radio at work, hands greasy, heart quiet. The empire was gone. The war was finished. The child was safe. That night, Maisie fell asleep on the couch with a coloring book open on her lap. Lena brushed her hair, gentle and real. Dominic stood in the doorway and learned how to be present without taking up all the air. Lena looked up at him. We're here, she said softly, like she still couldn't believe it. Dominic nodded. We're here, he echoed. What did you think of the story? Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who will also be moved today.